All right, so we start this meeting today by acknowledging the treaties and the traditional lands of the Indigenous people. This is a critical first step to restoring the understanding that we all share the land together. The land on which we gather today is Treaty 5 land, the traditional territory of the Cree, Ininewuk, Dene, Saulteaux, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe, and the Red River Métis people. We acknowledge their traditional territory to honor and show respect for their history. So tonight we're going to be talking about a seniors housing co-op, and access to adequate and accessible housing for seniors is a growing concern across Canada, and leaders are looking for innovative ways to address the issues for their community. One way to tackle this issue is to work together to start a seniors housing co-op. In this session, Ryley Hawkeswood, Community Engagement Coordinator for Co-operatives First, will cover what co-op businesses are, how co-ops can create and support senior housing, and share about the different types of housing co-ops. Ryley, as I said, is a Community Engagement Coordinator for Co-operatives First. He's from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan in Treaty 6 territory and holds both bachelor's and master's degrees in political studies from the University of Saskatchewan. During his studies, Ryley was a research assistant for a team researching housing security and homelessness in rural and remote communities. Co-operative First, Ryley helps guide groups to create co-ops mainly in rural and Indigenous communities across Western Canada. So everybody, this is Ryley. Ryley, this is everybody.
Nice to meet you folks. Yeah, thanks for that great introduction, Sandra. And thanks to all of you for making time on your Tuesday evening to learn about co-op solutions to seniors housing. As Sandra kind of shared, I will be discussing seniors housing, which is a very hot topic and a growing concern across Western Canada, and people are looking for innovative ways to address that. So outside of talking about co-ops, how co-ops can create and support housing, I'll also provide some tips and considerations for anyone who's interested in creating their own housing solution. So with that said, I'm going to open up my PowerPoint presentation. So folks, just give me a quick few seconds here. All right. Can folks see this right here? They can see my PowerPoint? Awesome. All right, so co-op solutions to seniors housing. Before we jump right in just a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about who we are.
Hey, 1 second, Ryley. We forgot to mention, Ryley will send me the slide deck so I can send it out to everybody. And we're also recording, so you can just sit and relax and listen and not have to worry about taking notes.
There we go.
And if you've got questions, I don't know, do you want them to ask them in the chat and we'll address them afterwards as they think of them, or do you want them to input?
It looks like we've got a fairly good group here. So if folks want to save them for the end, and then we can just have a conversation about any of the questions they might have, I can definitely answer that. And if I don't have the answer, I'll find you the answer and I'll get it back to you as well. But it should be a good session. We'll save the questions to the end and then we can have a conversation then.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So jumping right in, a little bit about us. So Co-operatives First is we're a nonprofit organization that supports people across Western Canada to create co-ops. Our organization is funded by Federated Cooperative Limited, Cooperatives Limited, and the Cooperative Retailing System to provide two important supports to communities in Western Canada. The first being accessible education on the co-op model and how it can be flexible. And the second being we provide free technical startup support for communities interested in starting a co-op. So why do we do this work? Well, several years ago, the Canadian Centre for the Study of Cooperatives at the University of Saskatchewan completed the Cooperatives Innovation Project, a research project that explored whether co-ops were still relevant in Western Canada, and if so, why weren't we seeing more co-ops being created? The study found that people are looking for community-based solutions like co-ops, but that few people knew about or understood the co-op model. As a result of that study, FCL created Cooperatives First to help raise awareness of what co-ops are and to help groups across Western Canada to get them started. We know this business model is a great way for communities to solve their problems and meet their needs. Since 2016, we've helped to create over 120 co-ops in the housing, childcare, investment, health, and agriculture sectors, just to name a few. So that's a little bit about cooperatives first. So the question becomes, what is a cooperative? Well, a co-op is a way of doing business that allows people to come together to solve a problem or achieve a goal. People might think of the local gas station, grocery store, or hardware agricultural supplier when they hear about the co-op businesses. But in fact, any business can be a co-op. A few things distinguish co-ops from other businesses. First, co-ops are owned by the people who use them. These owners are called members. These members make decisions together to move the co-op forward. Because the members are all equal, co-ops have a one member, one vote decision-making system with those owners. So unlike corporations whose shareholders have more decision-making power based on how many shares they own, everyone always has an equal vote in a co-op. Co-ops are overseen by a board of directors, and they're made up of those members. Second, they are an incorporated entity, which gives the members limited liability. Once they're incorporated, co-ops can access services that any other business has access to, like bank accounts and insurance to protect members and directors. Third, co-ops can be either for-profit or not-for-profit. For-profit co-ops distribute their profits amongst their members. Each member's portion of the profits is determined by how much they use the co-op that year. In a nonprofit co-op, which is also known as something called a community service co-op, any profits are reinvested back into the business and back into the community. These features of cooperatives make them an ideal way to create local services or achieve a goal together. The best part? They are all governed and led by people who have a vested interest in seeing the co-op succeed. Their purpose is to meet the needs of members, and the one member, one vote system means the members make decisions in the best interest of the co-op. The primary goal of the business isn't to create profit, it's to ensure people have access to services and goods they need. Today, or tonight, I guess I should say, I've been asked to not only talk about cooperatives, but about housing co-ops for seniors specifically. Many small communities are interested in this option as they often have aging populations of folks who want to downsize or need more care, but don't want to have to leave their home communities to find these amenities in a city. Before we get into the different models of housing co-ops that can be used to start senior housing, I'll share a bit about what housing co-ops are and what that co-op housing landscape looks like in Canada. Housing co-ops, as you might guess, provide housing for their members while allowing those members to have a say in decision-making. Many of the co-ops we see today are tenant or community-owned co-ops. These co-ops are a great way to tackle Canada's need to address affordable and accessible housing issues. In a housing co-op, the focus isn't on individual ownership or increasing property value, but it's on ensuring members have stable places to live that emphasize community. In a recent report by the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada, it shared that over 2,000 housing co-ops in Canada provide more than 90,000 units across the country. In Manitoba specifically, there are over 50 housing co-ops with more than 3,000 units providing housing for members. As these numbers grow, so has the support for housing co-ops. CMHC recently announced a new funding program aimed at helping to build new co-op housing structures and facilities. This program is called the Cooperative Housing Development Program, and its goal is to expand co-op rental housing, making it the most significant investment in co-op housing since the 1980s. I'll share a little bit more about it and how groups can access this later in the presentation, but I kind of just wanted to share a little bit about housing co-ops and the current landscape in Canada. So, jumping right in, it's the topic of discussion, seniors housing co-ops. When starting a housing co-op, it's important to start by identifying the community's needs and then structure the co-op to meet those needs. In some cases, Your senior housing co-op might only provide housing for those looking to downsize their home. In other cases, you might be considering some support and care services for seniors to age in place. The type of housing co-op you will start will really depend on the level of care needed in your community. A good place to start is researching your region to determine what needs exist and what land or facilities might be available to start a co-op. It's important to consult and plan early on with your community so that you're informed about what people need and what resources are available. Surveying your community is a great way to get public opinion and to hear from the people who will be accessing the seniors housing co-op. At the outset, researching and surveying will help to identify and determine whether the people who will be, or whether the people who will live in the housing co-op will need care services, if their main concern is affordability, or if they want to even just see a return on investment. Knowing this will inform the purpose of the co-op and will help in choosing a co-op structure. So I want to dive a bit deeper into the types of structures that housing co-ops can take on. When starting a housing co-op in Manitoba, there are 4 ways a group can structure the co-op to create community-led housing: nonprofit, equity or for-profit, community service, and investment co-ops. When it comes to these 4 structures, the nonprofit and equity housing co-ops have been the standard way we've seen groups across Canada structure their co-ops. Many of the housing co-ops in Canada today follow 1 or 2 of these structures. However, as the need for accessibility and affordability increases, communities are also finding innovative solutions to increase community-led housing, such as the community service model or the community investment co-op. I'm going to share a little bit about each option, starting with nonprofit housing co-ops. In Brandon, a group of seniors took matters into their own hands and created the Western Manitoba Seniors Nonprofit Housing Co-op in 2012. Residents who had small town farming roots were familiar with co-ops, and the model felt like a natural fit for creating the housing they needed. They created a 34-unit apartment-style housing co-op for seniors like themselves, providing homes for those with low to moderate incomes, while also offering equity share purchases into the cooperative. Because it's nonprofit, this co-op was able to access funding from many different sources to help cover the $5.8 million in cost of building the units. The city of Brandon contributed land, tax breaks, and financial contributions totaling over $500,000. The co-op also received $2.3 million in government funding from both the provincial and federal governments through the Affordable Housing Initiative. Members at this co-op come in with equity contributions ranging from $17,000 to $24,000, depending on the units they live in. All this hard work and community support created a community where seniors can age in place together. This is a great example of a nonprofit housing co-op. And nonprofit housing co-ops like this one are owned by their tenant members whose housing charges reflect the actual cost of operating the property. This is Canada's most common housing co-op model and meets the criteria of major affordable housing funding agencies like CMHC's Housing Development Program. This model offers renters an alternative to a landlord and greater control over decisions that affect their homes. Most of these co-ops will access some form of government funding to subsidize rents or construction and rely on a mortgage to cover construction costs. Next, we have equity housing co-ops. Another great story of an equity housing co-op. A Calgary, Alberta group decided on a unique housing co-op model to create their co-housing community. The Prairie Sky Co-housing Cooperative uses the equity housing model where each household owns its unit and they collectively own the land in common areas like a common house that includes common laundry and a large kitchen and dining area for everybody to eat together and attend events. This co-op is about community building. One member described it to us as an old-fashioned community where you know your neighbors and a chosen family. Prairie Sky consists of 3 buildings that mix townhouses and apartments around a courtyard on 3/4 of an acre. The co-op has 18 units and over 40 residents. It's a great blend, allowing members to build equity in their units while also being involved in making decisions together regarding the co-housing aspects of the cooperative. Prairie Sky Co-housing Cooperative is a great example of an equity housing co-op. These for-profit housing co-ops, like Prairie Sky, are a great alternative to condominiums. With this model, homeowners buy their units at market value and purchase a membership in the co-op. This model allows first-time homebuyers or those looking to downsize to build their assets value and get the unit's value when they sell. For-profit housing co-ops are the preferred model for creating a co-housing community like the one in Calgary. Members can benefit from increase in the market value, just as homeowners benefit from increased equity when they sell their homes. So that's the equity or the for-profit housing co-op model that we've seen. Now we're going to jump into two newer structures we've seen with housing co-ops that have recently gained more popularity when it comes to starting housing co-ops in Canada. The first one I'll share about is the Community Service Co-op, and a little bit about some groups that have used this model to create their housing co-op. In Mossbank, Saskatchewan, residents were tired of elderly community members having to move to cities to access housing with the level of care they needed. So, in 2011, they raised funds to create the Furrows and Faith Retirement Villa Cooperative, an assisted living facility. To create the co-op, community members rallied support from local businesses, auctioned off more than a few pies at $1,000, and relied on leadership from a group of volunteers to open the 16-bedroom facility that provides 24-hour care. Its membership is open to all community members who want to be involved in supporting the co-op, and it offers seniors a local option to age in place. If your community wants to create housing solutions, but isn't made up of the people who will be living in the building, a community service co-op like Furrows and Faith could be the right fit. With many of the same features as a nonprofit, a community service co-op is designed to provide services like seniors housing or to deal with issues like homelessness. Membership in a community service co-op is open to the public, so anyone can get involved and be a part of the solution, whether they live there or not. Our clients in Southeast Manitoba put this model to work and are well on their way to starting and to build a new seniors housing facility. They started the co-op in the RM of Piney in Manitoba's Sunshine Corner, which has a lack of seniors housing. Often, people move to Winnipeg or Steinbeck to access the care they need. Community members wanted to create housing for seniors, but recognized the need for government assistance to ensure affordable suites. So, in 2020, they created their not-for-profit co-op that's owned by community members. To date, this group has secured over $800,000 from municipal government, local housing supporters, and through fundraising, all through fundraising. Their not-for-profit structure aligns with the criteria for most granting agencies in the community's network of volunteers, ensures the co-op has the people empowered to keep moving it forward. The group in Piney was also able to access seed funding from CMHC to help with early stage planning and cover the cost of early development activities related to the pre-development cost of building a new affordable housing project. CMHC offers this funding along with its National Housing Strategy, a plan launched by CMHC in 2017 that aims to deliver a mix of funding, grants, and loans to create affordable, stable, and livable communities. This program has funding to help with creating new housing supply and even has specific programs to support the construction and build of senior housing with the apartment loan construction program. The flexibility of the community service co-op model allows for all community members to support the co-op while also approaching funding agencies, organizations, and governments to help with covering the cost of development and building the co-op facility. Our last example of the four is at a community investment co-op. This is the other new unconventional way we've seen housing created using a co-op. Our last example of a group doing this specifically is in Sangudo, Alberta. In this case, the model is a community investment cooperative, which is a unique way to approach creating housing. The Sangudo Opportunity Development Cooperative pooled money from local investors to support local businesses and initiatives. Seeing the lack of quality family homes in their community, the co-op invested in the construction of a new house. The sale of this home contributed to the co-op's revenue, and when the co-op generated a profit, it issued dividends back to its members. If the people in your community who are best placed to solve your housing problems are investors, this can be a great option. Community investment co-ops are a creative way to use a co-op to provide flexible housing or flexible financing to build housing stock while offering members a chance to invest in their community. Through the sale of shares or loans, investment co-ops allow community members to create a locally managed pool of funds to support building the housing stock. That way, members can see the direct impact of their investment. By bringing together businesses, investors, and community leaders, an investment co-op can be the tool to start the discussion about what your community needs to do to address that gap. Maybe you need more homes to house new workers, or maybe you need access to flexible capital required to build a seniors housing facility. When communities start an investment co-op, they can work together to plan for growth and follow through on those projects using capital from themselves. So those are kind of the four options and the four structures we've seen used, co-ops used to create housing in their communities. Very community-led in one way or another. It's community directly involved. Now that you have the four structures in mind, I wanted to revisit the Cooperative Housing Development Program. If you're interested in starting a nonprofit seniors housing co-op, CMHC has a funding program that can help. The Cooperative Housing Development Program, or CHDP, has $1.5 billion to expand co-op rental housing, making it the most significant investment in co-op housing since the 1980s. This program aims to build thousands of new cooperatively owned homes over the next 7 years. The funding will cover up to 100% of project costs through a combination of both repayable and forgivable loans. And this program will fund projects that operate on a not-for-profit basis, including nonprofit housing co-ops, senior housing co-ops, and Indigenous housing co-ops. CMHC also announced that this funding program will open up for its next intake sometime in the winter of 2025. If you are interested in your community needs that housing, there is funding available to help you get a nonprofit housing co-op built in your community. So that's the structures, and that's a little bit about seniors housing co-op and how it could look, or how communities can use those structures to start the conversation. Now we're going to jump into a little bit of the considerations when starting a housing co-op. So now that you've heard some of the stories of the groups that have started housing co-ops, and we've shared some funding supports that are out there, I hope some of you are thinking about how your community could benefit from a similar project. If so, here's some questions and considerations to think about. First, who's willing to lead a development? Is it community members who may need accessible or affordable senior housing? Or are local organizations, institutions, and businesses seeing a need for this housing in their community and want to be a part of addressing that need? Identifying who is willing to lead the development will help you outline the co-op structure and other details further down the road. By finding people to get involved, you can form the co-op steering committee and start to move the project forward. Second, identify the best funding source for your housing co-op. Does your community have local businesses, organizations, and individuals who can invest in building the housing? Or will the project you want to build qualify for funding from CMHC? Whatever the case may be, finding the best funding source will come down to the steering committee and who the members of the co-op will be. Your timeline will also play a role in how you approach the project. Start to think about the basics, like sites where the co-op could go, how many units it will need, what kind of care services are needed, if any, and finding the right people to make it happen. Early planning to identify these things will help your steering committee identify how much time and resources are needed from everyone involved. Also, reach out to your local municipality to let them know about your idea and ask if there are ways they can help. Local government can sometimes provide additional supports like donating funds or land. Now that you've had those questions and considerations, you've started working on those, maybe it's time that you're interested in getting started. To start your seniors housing co-op, you'll need to do a few things to get it moving in the right direction. First, you will need to find your people. To incorporate a co-op in Manitoba, you'll need at least 3 committed people to work on getting it started, becoming its steering committee, and eventually its first board of directors. Of course, housing is a big project, so the more people, the better. Survey your community or people you know who want a similar solution and have a meeting to discuss the kind of initiatives you'd like to start. Second, decide on that common goal. In this case, it could be providing more accessible or affordable senior housing in your community. The common goal will be defined by the people you decide. And that goal will help decide how the group moves forward in terms of planning, development, and eventually the operation of the co-op. Third, you will need to crunch some numbers and do some back of the napkin math with a high level budget. The more details you can gather about costs your co-op will face, the better. Start drafting a budget with details on land acquisition, cost of building the space, and other build and administrative costs to help your group apply for existing funding or approach investors. Finally, draft an action plan about how the steering committee can work together to reach your goal. Ensuring the group is mindful of or aware of the steps needed to start the co-op will be important to its overall success. Those are really the 3 early stage things groups will need to do to get started on a seniors housing co-op project. As Sandra kind of mentioned, if this is something that you're interested in and you want to learn more, we'll share this recording with groups afterwards so that they can remember and have these things for themselves to access and work through. Additionally, they can also reach out to us. So that's where I'm getting into next is how can we help? How can Co-operatives First help support groups in Manitoba interested in starting seniors housing co-ops? Well, we offer guidance to groups across Western Canada to help them create ready co-ops. Groups come to us with an idea for a co-op in their community, and we meet with them to discuss their idea and see if the co-op model is the right fit. We can then help incorporate the business, develop the co-op's governance and structures to fit the group's goal, and draft the articles, bylaws, and other documents needed to incorporate and start the co-op. We also have support for groups after incorporation. We offer business coaching services for groups looking to develop their business plan alongside our entrepreneur in residence. This service is free of charge, but we offer it to groups on a quarterly basis. Additionally, our Director of Education can also provide co-ops with governance support tailored to the group's needs. And our Director of Communications can help the co-op draft and develop a communications strategy. If groups maybe want to take a self-paced or hands-on approach, we do offer resources such as our online course for co-op entrepreneurs that walks groups or participants through the stages of developing their co-op. Our co-op creator contains resources and templates for groups to access at any point in the co-op journey. We also have our biz plan generator for those wanting to develop their business plan on their own. So really, how your community creates housing solutions depends on your local needs, populations, and available funds. Most importantly, it depends on the people ready to roll up their sleeves and find the solutions. If you're interested in a seniors housing co-op in your community, we can help support and guide you in developing and incorporating the co-op and get you ready to start your own seniors housing co-op. If that's something the group is interested in, I shared my contact information on the screen here. If folks have any questions, whether it be very small or even big questions, regardless, feel free to reach out, send me an email. I'm more than happy to have a conversation, whether it be by email, by Zoom, or even by phone call, and we can kind of walk through and chat about your idea and your questions. Additionally, I do have this QR code right here where folks can open up their phone, scan it on their photo app, and it takes them to our webpage designed for helping groups start a housing co-op. On that page, we have additional resources such as 2 webinars we hosted on starting a housing co-op with clients we've worked with, as well as organizations that help to support housing co-ops, such as the Cooperative Housing Federation, as well as CMHC representative on one of those videos. You can also find blogs there that we've written about these kinds of topics. So if that's something folks want to access, please feel free, scan the QR code. It'll take you right to our webpage. But yeah, that's the presentation I have for today. I guess we'll kind of open it up for questions if folks have any questions.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rod, right?
Yes. Question is, if the community already has a housing co-op that was maybe at 40 years old, does that preclude them from trying to start another one? Because the one that we have is very, very successful from my way of thinking, but we're really in need of more of that type of housing development. But would they be considered, or would they kind of be put on the back shelf and not considered for another one?
Yeah, so one of those things is we specifically help with starting the co-op itself, the governance, helping provide the insights and working through getting it started. In this case, we wouldn't be able to necessarily provide that support because your co-op's already started. But I do believe that there is funding mechanisms such as the CHDP. I'd have to double check and I can follow up with that for you for sure. But if I do recall correctly, the program it's there for new builds. So if an existing housing co-op wants to create more units, it is available for those groups to look into and create an application to apply for that funding to help them with new builds.
Or could it be a completely separate co-op?
If the group wanted to start a new co-op, we would be more than happy to help with drafting that. I didn't share, or I did share a little bit, but a large part of the free support we do is, meeting with a group. So let's say hypothetically, this was the group that wanted to start a housing co-op. I would, or one of our team members would meet the group like this, listen to the idea, take notes, and then from there, answer any kind of questions, answer any kind of, or address any kind of concerns the group has, and then help them go from that idea stage to incorporation. So that's things drafting like the articles, which really fit what the group wants to do. So we help guide through that, and then we help with filing for incorporation. So if you wanted to start a brand new housing co-op, that'd be something we could help with.
Another question, so if you're talking about funding opening in winter 2025, to take advantage of that, what has to be in place? Like what would have to happen now?
Yeah, so what would have to happen now is essentially the group would have to start working on getting the co-op incorporated. Before
Mhm,
it can even move forward with an application, it has
mhm,
to be an incorporated co-op. And then it's based on a criteria list. And what that criteria list is what groups get scored on. The higher you score on these point systems,
mhm.
is the more likely the group will get accepted for funding. So that's conducting things like a housing needs and demand survey of the community,
Okay.
finding and acquiring or getting into a contract to acquiring land, or a possible site where it could go, as well as identifying the units, as well as other kind of things. If folks are interested in having that conversation,
Mhm.
I can actually share some of the resources we have in a follow-up email after this, Sandra, that you can share with everybody who attended today. We do have quite a few resources on our webpage that folks can access. I'll kind of pull it up here and then share a link in the chat, actually. And then folks can actually just follow the links. But we do have a couple of blog posts that highlight what folks would need to do to get funding ready for the CHDP.
And looking like, okay, if it's opening winter of 2025, so that's sometime between January. Is it winter like January to March, or is it winter October to December, or we don't know?
That's the thing is we don't really know. The first funding period was in the spring to mid was to midsummer here. So it was 2 months. So it kind of really depends on what CMHC opens the period for. I, I
Okay.
I can't say we know exactly or have an idea. We just know it's going to be in the winter of 2025.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So, like CMHC is going through a series of information sessions right now for all their funding portals. So there is some other housing funding that there's information sessions are starting like even this like November, and then there'll be some coming up in December. So looks like they're going through all their programs, and then once they announce that one, they'll have the information session and then open up the funding portal. That's usually how it works. Um, we do have a housing assessment that was done for the PAW, which we used to apply to CMHC for the Housing Accelerator Fund. We're still waiting to hear back if we get that funding, but if we do, um, some of those fundings are like is used to incentivize new units being built. So some of those incentives could be if there was a housing co-op that we could designate some funds to, that could be a route right there.
Yeah, absolutely. CMHC, and like Jonathan mentioned, CMHC does have other programs that exist as
Mhm.
well that folks can access based on their situation as well. I mentioned the National Housing Strategy was announced in 2017. There's still a few programs that exist out there that folks can apply for. If that's something a group is interested in doing, we can have that conversation and kind of help groups identify potential resources that exist out there that they might want to apply for. Just kind of going based off that first question I got from Rod, it looks like there's about 10 criterias or factors that play into it. So financial viability, project costs, the scale, how soon, so shovel readiness, how soon can you begin, energy efficiency, extra points awarded if you're located in rural, northern, remote, or indigenous communities. There's priority groups, indigenous-led groups, support for women, and their children that dedicate a percentage of their units to women and children will receive higher points, and then affordability. So there's 10 kind of things a group gets rated on, scored on. That's the better term for me to use. That's what they get scored on for the CHDP. And the first program was, it looks like it was about 2 months, 2.5-ish months, going from July 15th to September 30th. So it could be anywhere from January to March, February to April. It really depends on CMHC and what they're looking to accept from applications. But yeah, I shared in the chat function a link to one of the resources we developed to help groups get ready to apply for the co-op housing development program.
So there's nothing for seniors mentioned on that pointing, like the awards, whatever, to get it awarded. Their seniors weren't mentioned at all, right?
As far as I can see on our summary there's nothing specifically for seniors, but groups looking to start seniors housing co-ops can still access this program
Of course.
to create CHDP or to use, sorry, the CHDP to create a housing co-op and get 100% of the costs.
Right.
But as far, and I don't want to speak for CMHC because that's based on how they kind of score it. But if you're creating affordable housing for seniors, that might score extremely high in that kind of percentage of the units you're building, what have you. And we can only speak to, the scoring. We're not, behind the closed doors.
No, I just wondered, how do they change the scoring cards, or is that pretty much a standard?
The most recent ones I've seen, the last couple that I've applied to, they're very similar. It depends on what their mandate or what they're like targeting funding for. It will be very direct towards that. So if you meet the criteria, more than likely it also depends on if it's a third party that's like scoring, or if it's like CMHC directly that's judging the applications. But yeah, they really look for that. But yeah, most of them are the same. Like there'll be affordable housing. They're very, they want to see details on what the housing is being built for. So very specific in, is it missing middle, or like seniors housing, affordable housing was on there. What types of units? So is it a single house? Is it a duplex, like threeplex, fourplex, things like that?
I just wanted to follow up on something Rod said earlier about there being an existing seniors housing co-op in the PAW. So I don't know, Rod, if you can speak to that, but is that co-op still active?
Oh yeah, no, it's very active, and it's very, very effective in the housing market here in the PAW. And that's the only reason I'm asking the question is would it, having one already in the PAW, would that kind of not put us at the top of the list if we wanted to start another complete new one? Because it's so good that we could certainly use one exactly the same size here. But I don't know if it sounds like you don't need to be part of the same one. You can just be having a whole new one to start up again. I'm assuming.
Well, with the housing shortage for seniors, has there been any discussion in that co-op of doing a next phase? Like, is there any appetite for them to move forward with this? If they've already incorporated and they have all, they've done all these steps already?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, I guess it's a conversation that you would have to have with the board of directors that's on that co-op. I haven't had. I just know that I know people that are on it, and I've been there, and it's a very, very successful place, and it's very nice. So
sounds like a resource we should tap into.
Yeah. But the board of directors for that, is it not the people living in there? Like the people that have purchased or invested, right?
So that That would be interesting because the CHDP is exclusively for new and existing nonprofit housing cooperatives. So as long as it's nonprofit, groups can actually access it for developing new builds.
Yeah, my understanding is it's definitely nonprofit, eh? So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then they could definitely apply for the CHDP.
Yeah.
And it like we've all kind of said, it's a conversation to be had by the board of directors and maybe the community and the membership to expand that. But this looking at the program and from what we've heard, it is available for new and existing nonprofit housing co-ops, you know, and it's mentioned on the website specifically that seniors housing cooperatives do follow under the eligible applicants for this. The type of projects that they do is, you know, new construction, densification, and the conversion of non-residential buildings. So very much focused on the new build specifically.
Then I'm guessing what has to happen is somebody has to take this on
Mm-hmm.
and be the lead on it. And, you know, like you say, you need 3 committed people to do this. So we need 3 committed people to take this on. And then, you know, step 1 would probably be talk to the existing co-op people and see what's going on and kind of, and then work with Ryley and go from there.
Well,
Yeah,
the reason I mentioned Valhalla, because I think that's what we're talking about here, is they do have a waiting list. So there may be a demand already there. And I'm not trying to push the conversation that way, but in terms of us talking about seniors housing, we're not starting at ground zero here potentially. That's all I'm trying to say.
Right, but we already have the housing needs assessment anyway, right?
We
Is that
d-
not,
yeah,
how old is that?
just it's almost 2 years old now.
Okay.
Which we're,
Fairly
we're
current though.
It's
yeah,
current.
yeah,
We're looking to do assessments.
we're looking at reviewing like every couple of years. That's one of the
Mhm.
mandates usually, is to then have it updated,
Yeah.
reviewed. So by like middle of 2025, we should already be updating that again. And then what they should do is get in touch with me and then we can get going on this.
Well, yeah, so would the next step not be finding out what we need? Right? So if we were thinking of going with co-op, right, that which we need to, would we not first say, what is it we're looking for? Are we looking for seniors' homes? Are we looking for a mix of seniors and handicaps? Are we looking at like, is that what the assessment report should be telling us, guiding us sort of?
Yeah, there was some recommendations in there that I have on what types of builds we do need. I also
Okay.
know of some other projects that are in the works. Like there is an assisted living development that we've had conversations about, and there's I've seen architectural drawings, so we're just looking for a location
Mm.
for that right now. So some of those things, it's like I could actually fill in the gaps on what we need.
Nice.
Yeah. Or what's already been working on, so we're not like duplicating everything.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
Mhm.
So they're already working on an assisted living for here?
I've been in contact with the developer on
Okay.
on that, and they've showed me plans and their model and partnership, everything. Just need to get a piece of land so we can go ahead with that.
That's awesome. That's great news. Do
But like as of right now, if funding is available already in the winter coming up, then the most logical thing to do is to approach Valhalla to see if they were looking at expanding their service and to get another build to happen, because they're already incorporated as a nonprofit. And then we could just look at the needs assessment. If they already have a waiting list, there's their needs right there. We need a second building to accommodate like seniors housing, something like that. And it's fairly simple. Like CMHC for funding, they depends, like the application was quite lengthy, but it wasn't a whole lot of information. It's just a lot of repetition in the questions and answers.
A government form.
Yeah, yeah, basically just explaining why you need it over and over again.
Yeah, are you
Um,
sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, and then breaking it down and being specific on like how many units it will be, how much it would cost, and then just showing how that would work. But yeah, they would need an operating budget, or like what Valhalla currently operates and how much revenue they're bringing in, how much it costs to operate their facility, things like that. Like they would already have that paperwork.
Mhm.
And they usually ask for a couple of years, like even 2 to 3 years. They would need to provide those financials, things like that. So that all that stuff is already produced or can be easily produced, I'd say.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add one thing about Valhalla, just in terms of us talking about that. There's a number of people, and I don't know what exactly, but I've spoken to a few individuals that live there that are happy living there, but they wish there was another option. But
Yes.
because we have limited options, there's folks in Valhalla that if we have a conversation with some of the folks there, that may give us other ideas of what our needs are, right? And I guess when you say what are our needs, I mean it's not only I think what you've already done, the good work on the assessment, but it's also talking to the folks in the community that may give us some ideas. So again, they're already involved in a co-op, so not trying to again just talk about Valhalla, but I think this is about seniors housing, right? So I think we've also identified some land that might be available. So some of these pieces that Ryley's talking about, I think, we're a little bit ahead of being at ground zero, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Who's going to take this on?
Well,
I'll put everybody on the spot right now because
I've been in contact with some of the players, so I would actually like to see this happen. I would totally take this on and continue the
I'd be involved.
discussions.
I would also be interested in working on it too.
There you go.
I was
And-
going to go Rod, Patty, Jonathan.
Oh, nice.
No,
No, that's great. Yeah.
this is the quickest I've ever seen a group identify the potential steering committee that I've worked with. This is cool. Yeah, if folks want to have or identify, survey their community, have that conversation, and then conversation comes that, hey, maybe we want to start a new housing co-op, or maybe we want to start a seniors housing co-op that provides a little bit different, services, depending on the level of need or the level of care determined within the community, surveying that need. And once you survey that need, it will really show you what is needed in the community, and you can build the housing co-op to fit that. So yeah, it comes back to what was said earlier is, there's been pieces that have already been identified, and it's not from working from ground zero. There's some insights and so there's some ideas and there's some moving parts that a group could work with to identify, okay, how and what kind of housing co-op are we starting? Seniors specific, of course, but it doesn't. I'm not going to get into the tunnel saying anything that it could just be a housing co-op. But in any case, you have some of the groundwork laid already. All you need, and I stress it, is the three people to start the steering committee that'll move this forward from idea all the way to incorporated first board of directors of that co-op that want to move it forward and get the facility built to provide the services to its community. So in large part, that's kind of the first three steps, and you've kind of already identified a few of the parts that are needed to move forward. So that is really cool how I just saw that kind of move in motion here on on this I want to say webinar, info session, community conversation, anything. It's really cool. But yeah.
Well, and so because of who Patty is and what Patty does, she's our secret weapon. Because Patty has boots. Patty has boots to the ground, knowing what's going on in the community and what actual people need. And she can put names and faces. Do you know what? They need this, they need this. So she's got a wealth of knowledge. So yay.
Well, yeah, we gotta have our first meeting here in the office.
Yeah.
Because I do need to meet with you then, Patty.
Absolutely.
There was actually discussions on another co-op that was starting, I guess, maybe 5 years ago. I've only been here for a year now.
Okay.
But the Prairie Integrity property, which is actually right beside Valhalla, they still own that property, and that was designated for like a housing co-op, which never happened.
That's what got cleared there, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right beside. So what I was trying to do all this year is find out how I can get in contact with this owner, Prairie Integrity, and be like, are you gonna build something? And if not, like release that property back to the town, and we
Yeah.
can move on with another owner, basically, to build something.
Do we know who it was?
I haven't been in contact or found like the actual person, but I do know the listing of the company itself. It's just no one's gone back to me since I've inquired.
We
Yeah.
can we maybe have a plan to get together and face to face and start the process and get some of the pertinent information we need to find out to move this thing forward, and however fast or slow it's going to go, but at least we need to have a conversation, with the people that are here that are interested, and then we can then kind of direct ourselves into who we want to talk to and how we want to get there.
Yeah, that sounds great. My office door is always open.
Awesome.
How quick do you want to meet, Rod?
I'm open anytime. I'm just thinking maybe Jonathan or Sandra just to put something together so that we could sit down and have a meeting, and then maybe we need a little bit of time to maybe talk to a few other people that may be interested in, that aren't on this call, that I'm sure may or may not be really interested in helping out, because I know of a few that possibly could be, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, just not tomorrow because it's my birthday, but anytime
Happy birthday.
after that.
Oh, happy early birthday, Jonathan.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Jonathan.
Yeah,
I-
not tomorrow.
Or the day after, right, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm going to be away the next week, the first week of December. That's all for me.
Yeah, if we could meet before Christmas, that'd be nice. That'd be good.
Yeah, let's try to set something up for just before Christmas sometime. So, all right.
Tyler and
Sounds
Kelly,
good.
if you're interested in joining in, please,
Yeah.
more than welcome. They're both on mute.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm here in Snow Lake just looking for something on our end of it, eh? So that's why I got the link through Becky there in Flin Flon to kind of see. So yeah, they tried to get something going here in Snow Lake a dozen years ago or so, and I'm not sure where it failed or what happened, but we're definitely seeing the need here. So we'll definitely gonna take the info and try and find some people here on our end. So really good
Fantastic.
discussion, you guys. Yeah, you guys are having really good discussion there. So it's good.
Okay, and now
Snow
the
Lake,
challenge is on. Now the challenge is on. We have to get ours done before Snow Lake does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought
Well,
Snow
it's
Lake, it was infrastructure issues, was it not?
I'm not sure, like where the land I thought they had identified a hotel went there. So I'm not sure what it was. Like it was Judy
Yeah.
Steves here that was doing that. Now she's just left town recently. But like it's not that we can't get a hold of her, but yeah, we want to. I know it'll be the only challenge I've heard. One of the challenges from people is always just healthcare, right? Like keeping people in the north is tough, right? So it's but
We
if
need
we
to
get the
improve that.
housing, yeah. If you're gonna stay here, you gotta have
Yeah,
this,
I did a round of healthcare this weekend.
yeah. We're gonna we'll start somewhere anyway. So
Yeah.
Awesome. If folks have questions as either groups, communities move through this, feel free to reach out to send me an email. You can I shared it on the screen. You can get it from the shared presentation, or even ask Sandra and gladly facilitate email connection. Although I've met you folks all on the Zoom call, and I've actually met you before, Jonathan, at EDAM's conference.
Yeah, I was gonna tell them I know you too. So if you if you need to get a hold of them and can't, you can go through me.
I'm
And
not hard.
I'll
I'm
nudge
not hard to get a hold
Ryley.
of.
Yeah, I know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do folks have any other questions, ideas they want to run by me? I always like to mention that even if you don't have questions now, you have one 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a week. That's how my brain works most of the time. The information it works in my brain, and then I come up with a question later. Feel free, reach out. I'm glad, happy to help answer any kind of questions. And if group's interested in starting something, we're more than happy to help provide those kind of supports. Like I mentioned, we provide the free technical and startup support in drafting the documents and everything, and providing the advice. We're pretty lucky that we've been supported, and our funding comes from Federated Cooperatives Limited, that they fund us to give back to co-ops across Western Canada. So if groups want to just pick my brain, have questions for me, please feel free, set up a time. I'm always here to help.
Could I ask a question? I don't know if you'll know the answer, but the Valhalla here, of the 4 options, it's a nonprofit, I understand, right? And based on an investment, like they don't own their apartment, but they do have to put an investment in. I believe they're still running like that. My mom was
Yes.
one of the first in there. That's all I knew.
Yeah, so you have to buy in to live in the Valhalla. I don't know
Yeah,
what
but
the fee is, like 10,000 or something, whatever the buy-in
yeah,
costs. But you
No, Jonathan,
you
it's
don't own.
it's a lot less than that, I think.
Oh, okay.
is it? No. That's not bad.
I'm not positive, but and you'd have to get it, but just knowing some people that were there, just asking about the fees that they paid to get in the buy-in plus their monthly, and it was a lot less than 10,000. But unless there's a rate that changes for different people, and that's why I was asking the question about wanting to get this going, because I was trying to figure out how it could be so reasonable, to get in there. So now I guess that'd be a question to talk to the people with Valhalla if they want to share that information, exactly what it is. But that's
Yeah,
just
it would be nice to know what their structure is, especially because they pay rent, and then there's like a strata fee or like admin fee sort of after that as well.
Yeah, and they're also expected to contribute to their, that's what keeps the cost down, if they can contribute to the maintenance and the upkeep and whatever it is. If they can do that, and they're expected to do that, so that does help toward keep the cost down too. So
yeah.
Jonathan, you might find on a shelf somewhere in your office the stuff about Winton Manor too, in terms of what type of structure that was going to be in terms of a co-op.
I'll just rip this office apart then and throw papers everywhere.
I only mention that because there's probably some seniors in our community that worked on that.
Okay.
And there was a board. There was a board that was created for that initiative too.
Because the Valhalla board, in all fairness, I doubt anyone on it worked on it originally, right? Just because it's the people that live there now.
Yeah, I would think you're right, Patty, because it's 40 years since it started. So I don't think anyone there was there 40 years ago.
Yeah.
One thing too, I'll kind of mention the Western Manitoba Seniors Nonprofit Housing Co-op in Brandon. They also had members come in with equity contributions from 17,000 to 24, depending on the units. And they contributed, but if a member was to ever leave the co-op would then, pay them back that equity that they have in. So it's one of those things. It might take time for a group to
Valhalla does too.
Fill in, find someone else to make that contribution and fill in the spot. But you get it back. It's just to help with the costs. And that's what the group in Brandon did.
Yeah, and I know Valhalla did that too, because it'll go right to their estate or whatever too, like if they pass away there. So Okay, and that was the other question. So the one in Brandon, it sounds like it's probably similar to Valhalla, right? That they're just making investments, but a pretty high investment. So how is that one doing really well, and how many years has it been open?
So that one's been open since 2012. So
Oh.
relatively new in comparison to Valhalla. This wasn't one that actually we directly helped with or helped with. It actually precedes our organization's creation, but it's a cool
Okay.
example of,
Yeah.
nonprofit
Yeah.
where folks used many different pots of funding to
Yeah.
create create the services they need. And so they use that 17 to 24, depending on the units, of course, like I mentioned. But
Yeah.
then in contributing that, the co-op can use it and then offer, a little bit more, less costing units or monthly costs because the co-op has that capital to contribute to
That's right.
the mortgage that they picked up for funding the rest of the amount needed in the 5.8 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And oh, I had another question that's going on. Yeah, so just to put it out there, I think the biggest concern is, especially here, we see what's happened with Pine View. That was a beautiful building. It was originally 55 plus, and was it 55 plus and handicap, I think. And then they really pushed to add the extra on, and Manitoba Housing has taken over, and I mean, it's a bit scary in there right now, which is better than it was, though, gotta say that. But I think the fear, and that's where Valhalla has been very successful, that there isn't anything, there's no concerns in Valhalla, right? So I think that's one of the main things, that when you go into the co-op, you have some say with who's going to be a part of your community, right? Because I mean, they destroyed King Court. It used to be really well, destroyed it. And Pine View is, they're going down that road. They just have half their apartments empty right now, which makes no sense either. But yeah, so I just wanted, I guess that's the biggest thing for the co-op, is to keep you having a say in your own community.
Yeah,
Like,
and I,
Yeah.
and I
the
think there
people
might be some lessons to be learned from the Winton project too, that you referenced earlier, that was referenced earlier, because it kind of fell by the wayside with some problems there too. And so I think I'm just not sure how long ago that was. Do you remember now?
I don't remember.
Well, that's got to be getting close to 20 years ago, Rod, I think.
Yeah.
15 years for sure.
Yeah, 15. I think it started out with good intentions, and it kind of fell apart too, so.
Well, the problem is we get involved in this when we're going to be looking for a place, and right? So if it doesn't happen, then those people leave.
Yeah, it was funny. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was going to ask the question, is the timeline from the time you start thinking about it till the time that it actually happens, the people that are actually thinking about it become too old to be in there.
That's right. Well, and you look at Valhalla, and I'm not sure if they're still doing this, but when I was supervising home care, they didn't want anybody in there that needed home care. So I had a little fit. Only because people need home care for many different reasons. It could be a surgery, it could be a hip replacement, you had a fall, you're not losing your marbles and can't live on your own. And even if you did, there's ways of keeping you safe living on your own. Like, so it just was a part of the board of directors was creating some of that, I think. So I'm not sure if they're still doing that or what happened there, but basically it was against some rights to be doing that. So
Yeah, I've heard some stories. Like I know people that live in Valhalla, and as like everybody I know is they're able-bodied, and yeah, they don't need like assistance. They're living on their own, and
yeah, and they all are until something happens.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So
for sure.
so
For
we had a
sure.
lady that needed help. We knew she did. She didn't need a lot of help, but she needed some assistance. And as soon as you start failing, you're not eating. You're missing, and then you're just not firing on all pins anymore. So slowly deteriorated, but she would not take home care because she'll get kicked out. That was her concern. So what happens? We find her one day and off to St. Paul's, where she could have lived a good life still. We could have been in there helping her or somehow, right? But when they're
Yeah,
living like that, that's not right.
there needs to be some sort of, even if Valhalla still wants to operate the way they are, then at least some sort of transition between like
Yeah,
seniors housing and then
yeah,
assisted living or some other
yeah.
type.
Well, and that was my
Yeah.
thoughts. My aunt in Winnipeg lived in this big block. It's down Pembina. I forget what it's called now. But they had one floor that was like a mandatory assisted living. So they didn't have kitchens, they didn't have stoves. They, that one floor didn't, whereas others still, you could be involved or not. So you could be looking at something like that as well, so that you would have that transition still.
Oh yeah,
Assisted
yeah.
living, you just need someone cooking your meals. And if there's a healthcare aide or a nurse available, that's all they need, right?
Well, another thing is that I don't know if anybody looked at Opaska Times this week, but it looks like there's a nice, real brand new 55 plus block advertising in our paper in Dauphin. So when we talk about what our needs are, and I think it's really good comments what you guys are saying about this assisted living, and there needs to be more options, right? I think that's what we're saying here. We don't even have 55 plus option, right? So as a person steps into that first part of moving out of their home, and that's why I was referencing before, some people that are living at Valhalla would rather be in a 55 plus or in a condo
Yeah.
or some type of other apartment, but we don't have any of those options.
Yeah.
So I'm very enthused to hear about seniors housing.
Yeah.
But if we really want to mushroom this conversation out,
Yeah.
and I don't want to take up too much of Ryley's time, we have needs in every sector, and I'm sure Jonathan,
Agreed.
in his study, that can be referenced. So we can't do it all, but we got to start somewhere, and I think this is a great place to start. But again,
Well,
with what you're saying,
Kelly,
if we had 55 plus, that would help
Yeah.
some of the other things, right?
Well, you also have those areas in the city that are, I don't know if they're a full 55 plus, but you get gated communities that you own your home, there's security, there's just that added community value that you're looking out for each other kind of thing, right? And the gated communities provide a little more, that maybe your husband passed and you're still only 50, that you're too young to be all alone, right? And that's often the people that want to be in those, or one of you is getting more frail, whatever. It's not a lot of yard work, but you do have a yard if you want to do something with it. So condos are nice that way. So maybe it's something you can have options, who knows, right?
Yeah. And Kelly, I think in the next 5 years, we can have all three of those options. We can have 55 plus or assisted living and another
Awesome.
seniors housing.
Hopefully I still know who
think
I am.
so.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like there's a great conversation coming along. It's nice to just hear it and be a part of it and just hearing folks' perspectives. I think in one way or another, we've kind of touched on every section I kind of listed in the PowerPoint. Like we just discussed, there's a need, and, surveying the need within the community is an important part of defining what kind of housing co-op are we going to start? Is it seniors assisted living? Is it just a place for seniors to downsize? Is it for 55 plus? That's a good part about surveying the need in the community. But to just touch on all of it, it's great to see the conversation really reflective of what we kind of all discussed tonight. So it's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this conversation, and if there's a way we can help at Cooperatives First, please let us know. I keep saying that. I just want to make it known that we're here to help. But yeah, that's exciting stuff. Because I don't want to take up too much of your folks' Tuesday night, do folks have any other questions or anything I can help with? I know I've said it a few times, but I just want to make sure it's all out there. And if I don't have the answer, I'm working on getting it for folks.
I'm just wondering about the CMHC funding. Do they have input like after the build is done? Like I've heard of that in older properties that they were quite involved with. I don't know the operation or just the spending of money, so I'm just wondering how that works after the fact. If you do get a build funded from them, like how involved are they after the fact?
That's actually a great question. I'm going to be completely honest here, and I'm not entirely sure the scope of what say they have in after build, because in order to get the funds to build the construction, you need to be a successful applicant of the CHDP program. So you'd already checked the boxes and you met and you scored high enough to receive the funding. In this case, that's something I can actually follow up with. I'll actually write that down, just here, Tyler, and then I can actually follow up and, maybe provide a little bit more insights on that. I know that, to some degrees, 1/3 of the CHDP funding is forgivable over a 20-year term, depending on a group meeting, the requirements of energy efficiency, affordability, on those kind of parameters. But I don't know for the other 2/3 if they have a lot of say. That's just something I can look into for sure and get back to you on.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be good to know, like especially with CMHC, there is some reporting requirements, like during that period you get the funding, you're building for the next 2, 3 years, and that's like the funding period. Then there's like every few 6 months maybe or something, or a year, there's then a report that you have to do on how you've progressed through your project and what stage you're at. So yeah, Riley, if you could find out about those requirements, like if you do then get funding, is there any sort of reporting or other things that like the organization would need to do to keep up the funding?
I didn't realize I muted myself. I had to go digging for a pen. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll reach out and see if we can find an answer on that. And then whatever we find, I can share with Sandra to relay back to all of you. I can also just get your email addresses from Sandra as well and just share it with you folks as well, what we find regarding, what does CMHC have or require reporting wise afterwards when you are a successful applicant for their funding. Sounds good. I'm just writing that down. Yeah, great question. And probably a very big one when you consider applying for a program like the CHDP or the National Housing Strategy. So yeah, I'll follow up with that and get back to you. Any other questions or things folks have?
Uh, yeah, did they allow flow through funding? So say if the other organization was a partner at this stage, but say like either Cedar Lake or the CDC, if that was the main funding body, because like through CMHC, I already have like a portal, a funding portal and everything. So like I would be able to then like go log in and I could apply like through the CDC. So yeah, is there then a flow through with like a partner organization so that the funding's coming through the CDC, but then it's not being used by me. It's the partner organization that's then doing the build.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
wouldn't the funding have to come through the co-op? Like the co-op would get the money.
Oh yeah, they would get it, but sometimes like you can have a main applicant sometimes that
Okay.
like then it's flowing through the CDC to the co-op instead of the co-op being the main applicant, sort of. However, whatever their criteria is on that.
Sounds good. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen them say anything specific to that in the webinar I was in. Not to say that it's something that they haven't said before. I'll look into that because that's an interesting idea, is that a partnering organization with the co-op itself or even, and we're getting farther down the governance line, but let's say the co-op starts and supporter members, not the tenant members, but let's say there's a class for supporter members, such as organizations like CF Cedar Lake or the local economic development office, right? Would they be able to apply for the co-op itself? That's something I'll look into. But yeah, it'll all depend, because I would assume that if the CDC was a part as a member of the co-op, I don't imagine it being an issue. If they aren't a member specifically, but more so a partner or supporter without having that membership, that's something I can look into and get an answer on.
It says here, eligible applicants are nonprofit housing cooperatives as standalone cooperatives or in partnership with another nonprofit, student housing cooperatives, and senior housing cooperatives. And then there's land trusts and indigenous co-ops. That's just right from the
Yeah, the Am I Eligible page. Yeah. I see that there. Yeah.
But I think what you're saying too is what earlier, Ryley, is equity partners. So it's something that we talked about here, that there's a number of business owners I've talked to that when we talk about housing in general, I was really happy to hear when you talked about the 4 different models that there's an equity opportunity. So within a co-op, I was kind of rattling around my brain, how could we structure this? But what you provided for information provides that there's a stream to be able to do that.
Okay, so
if I'm understanding.
Just hang on. Equity cooperatives are not eligible.
They're not for the CHDP, but
Not
they're
for the CHDP, but for other things, yeah.
but they're possible to start
Yeah.
a housing co-op in Manitoba for sure.
Yeah. But they're not eligible for this CHDP, which like sounds amazing.
What does CHDP stand for?
Cooperative Housing Development Program.
Duh. Okay.
No, that's I often use acronyms because sometimes it's a really long, just really long wording. Like I use CMHC a lot, but Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation, it's a mouthful. But yeah, I
Yeah,
can.
no, that's the problem. I came from computer programming, so it's all acronyms. Okay.
Sometimes you'll see many acronyms similar or the exact same, and you think,
Yeah.
"Ah, I wonder it's being referenced here, this or that." But yeah,
Mhm.
this
So
is
Ryley, sorry, I just wanted to finish my thought there, which
absolutely.
was that if like we know that you said there were 7 years that this stream that we're talking about is available, right?
They're committing the funding over 7 years.
Yeah.
But folks will be able to apply over the next 4 years or as the funding is available.
And I think what we're saying as a group is they're very excited to know that these funds are available. And like with what Sandra was saying is that within the scope of that funding, that type of model might not be eligible. But when we're talking about an overall strategy for housing, we would look at that type of cooperative as potentially being something that would work in our community, as well as talking about seniors housing or the structure that we're saying is eligible for that.
Well, yeah, that opportunity, and I can touch on that a little bit more, Kelly. That opportunity development co-op, or known as an investment co-op, is a really cool idea, and it's a really innovative model we're seeing across Western Canada. Like the group I mentioned in Sangudo, Alberta, they pooled some of their funds into the investment co-ops and then used that to build available housing stock by building a brand new house. They eventually were able to sell that house after the pandemic and were able to return their money back to the members with a little bit of extra profit as dividends back to those members. So it did give them back a return on investment. What that percentage is, I'm not entirely sure. The group didn't really quite share the amounts, but they did mention that there wasn't a return on investment. And so in coming full circle, the form of the housing co-op really follows what the community might need. So coming back full circle to surveying the need, maybe there's, a community that's willing to invest their local, savings, extra cash that they might have in an investment co-op that wants to build, a facility or even or even just homes, new homes. The co-op can do that, then sell the home and get that return on investment plus that money back to its members. And those members can then reinvest back into that investment co-op for other projects as well. It's a really cool mechanism for providing that flexible financing for different kind of projects. We've seen it used for supporting local entrepreneurs and businesses as well. So it's a really cool idea.
So it could actually come out to be like, if like some people wanted like the seniors housing co-op and then there's an investment co-op, it could be two completely separate things happening at the same time. So it doesn't have to be a one or the other. Like, okay, we're going to do the seniors housing co-op and this is the money that we can take advantage of. But then the investment co-op might be looking at the 55 plus housing and doing something like that.
And I think the narrative is that in the community, we all know is that everybody's talking about housing. So even if it's not on a complete ROI, there are a number of people that say, how can I help? Well, if there's an opportunity to make some sort of an investment, then, you know, again, like you say, Sandra, there's different types of models that might work. And once, like Ryley said, maybe at some point you create a communication strategy and you can articulate that to the general community that we're working on housing, and there's a number of different things that we're working towards, right? So like you say, Sandra, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but we have to start somewhere. So this all sounds really good, but you know, I think it would be helpful for people as we move along to know that, yeah, there's different ways that we can make this work. Like Ryley says, it has to meet what our needs are, and we know we've got lots of needs.
We need to get the 30-year-olds thinking about it.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
That's right.
Well, for sure, because there's a lot of people in my demographic that are looking for housing and they can't buy into the market. But if 10 people my age that are professionals in their field come together, they could totally just pool their money, resources.
But
and
also,
get them
also
built.
if 10 people move into the senior housing co-op, there's 10 houses available for sale.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a need. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great conversation. I keep reiterating that. I think this is a really great conversation, and a lot of thoughts and ideas are coming to folks, and I'm excited to see that. Moving forward, if the group wants to move forward and wants to start a co-op or has questions about starting it, I've said it, but please feel free, reach out. I'll actually even share my email in the chat function here, and then that way folks have access to it as well immediately. So if you have questions later tonight or even tomorrow morning, please send me an email. But yeah, it's been great.
Okay. If we're serious, the next thing to do would be to incorporate, right?
Yep. So identify your market. So, you know, where you want to do what you're doing, your people, then we can help you move forward with incorporation.
We should you can help with the incorporation.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, good.
To come up with a name.
That's a part of the process.
Well, we can then maybe have our plan to have a meet here in December and then go from there. Perfect.
Yep.
What you could do is once you get everything together, why don't you have like a contest, have a naming contest for it and let the community. It's a really cool way to introduce it to the community.
That's how I named Snackland all those years ago.
Oh, cool.
It was our cousin that drew the little chocolate bar.
Awesome.
Well, if Valhalla expands, there'll be Valhalla 1 and Valhalla 2.
No, that would be like Michael's 1 and Michael's 2. No. Yeah. No, but I think if you went back, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I think there was nowhere to go when Valhalla started. That's why Valhalla started. Because my mom was never thinking of leaving her home. But when Valhalla started, she bought in. And she left me high and dry at 23 or something. And my sister that was 33. But
it's like I sit there and I'm 3 years away from being able to move into a seniors housing co-op. So get working. Someone can buy my house.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Any final questions or concerns before we hop off?
Nope, I think,
No, good. We can meet. We'll meet
Thank you.
offline.
Thank you. This is like, has been one of the best
mhm.
web chats I've been on. It's just, I feel so energized. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is actually really cool that I got to witness a group working through the ideas and having conversations. I think this is awesome. Yeah, if folks do have questions, reach out. We're here to help. But with that, I don't want to take up too much more of your Tuesday evening. But if you have questions later tonight or tomorrow or later this week, reach out. I can help out.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for
Yeah,
taking the time
thank you.
tonight.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you,
Ryley.
Ryley.
Yeah, thanks for
Wonderful.
inviting me.